Welcome to part 6 of Scott's big 500-gallon aquarium. Last week we installed or switched out that fancy filter system, took out an established wet-dry trickle filter. We've replaced it with a Euro-style mud algae filter concoction that he's come up with. He claims in the last week he's had a very small ammonia spike and no nitrite. So it appears as though the filter system may be working, but at the same time he's done absolutely nothing as far as that out of control ick situation is concerned, and I fear he's going to start losing fish real soon. So let's check with Scott today, get an update on that filter system, and also get an idea as to what he plans on doing with this ick, because it's going to start taking fish here soon, and you're going to have a fancy tank with a fancy filter system and no fish. The fish don't look that good, so let's take a look and find out how the filter system itself is working and what happened with that potential flood that almost occurred.
Here we are a week later. Sump did not overflow. Went up there, adjusted the Durzos and adjusted a ball valve on the drain line. That balanced everything out nice. It's been a busy week cleaning up wires and getting everything in order. We've added a couple float switches to the sump. They'll be useful if we add an auto top off down the line or an auto water change. Most importantly, they're useful to keep the skimmer from overflowing. So if we shut a pump off and the sump fills up, this float switches are programmed to shut down one of the skimmer pumps, and that'll keep the skimmer going, but it'll reduce the water going into it and keep it from overflowing. I learned this when I had to do some maintenance on the fuge last week and shut a pump off, and the skimmer consequently overflowed. I caught it in time and had a bunch of stuff to drain out. Another project was to add our carbon reactor and our GFO reactor. So these were on the last system. We bolted them up to the supports for underneath the tank. Made a nice little manifold there where we can control our water flow through them. Also left an extra valve if I want to add something down the line like a calcium reactor. Essentially you can control the flow into them. Then they drain into the overflow or the inlet on this refugium. Here we have our pumps. We have a return pump here. It's a 5,500 gallon an hour reflow. It returns to the C-swirls up above the tank after drawing from the sump. It also has a leg that goes to the chiller. It returns also back to the sump. This is our circulation pump. It's a 4,400 gallon an hour reflow dart. It pulls from the back of the tank and returns to the base of the overflow and keeps detritus from underneath the rocks. So the refugium, it's got about 100 pounds of mud, live mud, and then another 150 or so pounds of live sand in it, as well as about 40-50 pounds worth of live rock from the old sump that I took a hammer to and smashed up into rock rubble. Some rubble bigger than others. We've got 2 lights on it. They run 17 hours a day. They're on primarily when the other lights are off, but there is some overlap. Taking our little lights off, there's 65 watt, 6500K lights. Pull our little lid off here, and inside we've got our massive pile of Chaeto. It's been growing pretty well. We've kind of opened it up and spread it out around the tank. Also have some mangroves in there. And everything seems to be doing fairly well thus far, and I've definitely noticed over the last week some massive Chaeto growth. It's probably almost doubled in the last week.
Chaeto is an algae, and it's currently the algae of choice for algal-type systems. It's advantageous because it grows quickly and absorbs nutrients readily.
So a little bit about the protein skimmer. It's a Royal exclusive Alpha 300 cone skimmer. Cones are kind of the newfangled idea in protein skimmers. They're supposed to be ultra efficient. It uses 2 pumps. Essentially they pump water into the protein skimmer as well as air. They double as recirculation and venturi pumps. They're Red Dragon pumps and highly regarded, or at least so they say. Skimmer after a week, I have to say I've been pretty impressed with it. A little bit of adjustment can kick out a lot of nasty stuff out of it. I'm actually thinking about using it in part for my water changes. Crank up the volume on it a little bit so I get a real wet skim, and it'll take out 5-10 gallons, whatever I want at a time, and put in fresh water, and that at least when I do my water changes might help take out a little bit more than just water from the tank. Might take out dirty water. Dirtier anyways. So it's been a pretty stressful couple of weeks. You know, the system has been running. I've had this tank for more than 15 years, and I've never really had to deal with it. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, it crept in. Jim has been really pushing me to run copper in the system, and naturally I'm a lot reluctant to do it. We'd have to set up another tank for the corals, and while that may be an imminent possibility, I've been doing a fair amount of reading, and I'm hoping that I'm learning something. First thing I attempted was
Learning. Listen to your fish guy. That's what you should be learning.
oh boy, oh, I got my virgin ears. So first thing I started with was this Kick product. Read mixed reviews on it. Up until the Sump swap, I was using it for about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I did fail to read the fine print on the directions where it tells you to remove carbon from the system. So for the first week and a half, I was putting this stuff in and probably not doing much good. We had about a week of using it without the carbon in the system, and then came the filter swap. My experience in the past, whenever I've glued stuff up and run water through it, it seems like there's some sort of a casualty. Last time I glued up some fittings into the tank, I killed an anemone shortly thereafter, and I kind of blamed it on perhaps the glue that was in the system. After the Sump swap, I did lose a couple of the pseudochromis, was it?
Royal
Grommas. Royal Grommas. I lost 2 Royal Grommas the day after adding the new Sumps, and my thought process was that it probably had something to do with some of the chemicals that were introduced to the system. So at that point, I stopped using the Kick and I turned my carbon on this last weekend. My thought process was to get whatever stuff that's not, supposed to be in the water out of the water using the carbon. Also eliminate any of the Kick in it, so that I could basically start over with a baseline that I was comfortable with. And so where we're at right now, I've added heat to the system. I've elevated the temperature to 82 degrees, and I've kept it pretty consistent between 81.5 and 82 degrees for the last several days. I have noticed a pretty significant improvement, especially in the last 2 or 3 days, with some fish, while at the same time other fish have declined. So I'm thinking that the heating of the temperature has actually sped up the ick cycle, and hopefully it's getting me to a point where I might see better results with the Kick, which I'm planning on resuming that treatment this weekend.
And here's the heart of the issue. Because of the invertebrate life, because of the corals, you can't add effective medications.
At the end of it, if these attempts fail, the only other alternative is going to be to set up another tank with a place to move the soft corals and the invertebrates into, and then treat the tank with copper, which I really don't want to do, but that may be the only last possibility.
The bottom line is, this is either a fish tank or a coral reef tank. You can't have both, because you can't effectively treat the fish if you have a problem in a coral tank.
I'll be saying something in the voiceover.
Yeah, sure.
I told him to keep that tank with copper.
Hopefully the next episode I could say, I told him I'm not treating the tank with copper.